So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And if there are questions, I see John raised his hand.
Yeah, Wally, make the checks out to Amnesty International or the Clear Lake chapter or what?
Yes, make it out to the Clear Lake chapter of Amnesty International, please. Yeah, just as was shown on the screen.
Okay.
I'll bring that up again just so I point that out. So if it's written Amnesty International Clear Lake chapter 1017. So you can abbreviate AI, Clear Lake chapter 2017 on the check, maybe.
Oh my God, I paid $4,200, bailed her out of jail, and she paid me back the next day.
Okay, that's all I have. If there's no other questions, I'll go back to mute.
Okay, thank you, Wally. So today we have two special speakers, and the topic is the human rights status in Turkey today. Okay, the first speaker is Mesut Atik. Mesut is a Turkish-American who first moved to Texas with his family in 2001 when he was 7 years old. He has a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science from Rice University. He currently works at the same high school that he graduated from as a college and career success advisor. He has been involved in his community's educational extracurricular programs, both as a student / mentee and later as a teacher / mentor. He volunteers to teach and mentor in his community's educational mentoring programs. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Mesut Atik. Go ahead, Mesut.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate you having me here as a part of this very important, very valuable group. Thank you all for what you guys do on a regular basis, and thank you for including and passing the mic to hear about and learn about and explore the issue at hand. And yes, we will be two speakers speaking in turn, and the topics at hand are such that they probably merit much longer than just 15 minutes or half an hour in its totality. But hopefully today's discussions can be kind of a stepping stone, maybe a starting point for everyone here to increase our exposure to and understanding of the grave situation and circumstances that are plaguing this much beloved and very important nation. And I don't say that just because it's my home country, but because just like every country out there, Turkey should have a part to play in the betterment of humanity and the improvement to people's lives and humans' lives, and the processes and the universal values that we all value, and should be a leader rather than having taken a huge step back, as we'll see. So thank you all for having me. Without further ado, I will get into it, as we have Claire, who will speak after me. So I don't really want to go into her time or the total time of the group. What I was thinking of, I was thinking about how to approach this, how to, again, the topic that I'll be speaking on and sharing my screen to show you is the current status of human rights. And so how we'll kind of explore that is through examples. I've always been a fan of show and tell as a very effective way of, teaching, or as a way of helping people understand or get to know. And out of those two, seeing as how we're pressed for time, I would rather pick show rather than tell, because as we all know, pictures are worth 1,000 words and speak louder than words. And so what I'm going to kind of be doing today is more so act as a kind of an inside, kind of informed curator of sorts, since I am of Turkish background and my family. And so I kind of have firsthand knowledge as well of kind of the things that we'll be talking about. People I know have experienced some of the things that we'll be talking about. And so I'll kind of be just curating the situation, and I will include some links here, if I can, in the chat here. These are kind of the links from which I'll be presenting. You don't have to worry about pulling this up right now. I'm just putting this here for your reference. I'll be sharing my screen to walk us through this. And specifically, these are, some pages. There is an organization called the Advocates of Silence Turkey, AST, and they've been kind of the forerunners in compiling the data, the information, the news articles, and the whole kind of chronicling the whole timeline of this unfortunate kind of unfolding of events in Turkey in terms of the loss and a shift away from democracy into more of a less desirable and more authoritative kind of situation. And so their works and their blogs and their publishings actually serve as great readings and points of exploration for the topic and to gain a better understanding. I'll specifically, and on this page there are PDFs, so I'll be sharing my screen now. So out of these three, I've shared these three specific pages, and I just, rather than telling you, I just want to show and kind of leave everyone up to their own devices to draw their own conclusions. And again, as someone who's lived through and who's always kept up with the news, because it obviously concerns me and my family from a first degree perspective, I can help you guys to kind of understand the human side to this. So we have this PDF. It serves as a very great visual cue as well. This is kind of a publishing. Again, there is a printed version of this and a PDF online version. And so a lot of these things are quantified, some of the things that we have seen, unfortunately, in Turkey unfold. So a lot of these refer to when we talk about the current status of human rights, and as I said, we'll be going off of an example. Specifically, as we all may know, the coup attempt, the coup attempt, supposed coup attempt. There are a lot of different discussions and explanations and studies historically or sociologically on what that was, or politically on how that came to be. But kind of in the fallout of that, what has happened, and the specific targeting of a specific subsection of the population, or Turkish nationals, I think is an example of what kind of Turkey's government is able to do right now. And so I think it's an important thing not to just say, oh, there's only these people that are kind of in this situation, that are kind of being victims of this kind of activity. It's important to understand that when a government can act a certain way to a certain subsection of the population, that's cause for concern, I think, empathetically as well as logically for the whole population, because if it happens to someone, then it can happen to somebody else. An example might be, if a gunman kills somebody, they don't really have to kill you for you to be alarmed, or for you to call that out and be outraged and demand justice for that. And so in this regard, we'll be using kind of the main focus of the Turkish government, which has been going after the NGO, the Hizmet movement, which is a movement that like-minded individuals working together to help bring Turkish culture and language and value and kind of bring the world together from different parts in terms of around an educational goal, as well as, you know, bring people together in sharing a certain culture. And so the things that we'll be looking at, the things I'll be curating are a little, I guess, not for the faint of heart. I don't think there are any images that are very, that I have to, have a caveat about. But when you think about it, the things that are done, it might seem too bad to be true, but unfortunately, it is true. And so the AST has made it its mission to kind of chronicle that. So these are the table of contents, and I do want to just kind of show you this because I don't have too much time, so that you can always refer to this. That's why I've shared the links as well. So all of these things, we'll just look at the first couple. These are all things, the fallout of this kind of a witch hunt of sorts, where the government has targeted a certain peoples. And at this point, for the population of Turkish citizens, I don't think anyone in Turkey is without a friend or a relative or an acquaintance who is not within this group of people that's being targeted. So it actually should be concerning the whole nation and its citizenship. But as we see it throughout history in these types of big authoritative and oppressive regimes, is a certain subset of the population is made to not really be vocal about that, and then that increases certain actions. So, for example, 1.6 million people persecuted since the beginning of this witch hunt, and I'm not going to be reading every one of these, so don't worry about that. But the Hizmet movement, against the Hizmet movement in Turkey, about 1.6 million people were investigated over terrorism charges. Again, so in the courts, in the legal system, as it stands, what it's been reduced to, or what it has become and transformed into, practically an arm of the government that's at the head. These trumped up charges, these charges of the highest degree, are being brought against everyone. It could be somebody who's 80 years old who donated so that kids could have their education, scholarship money. It could be someone who is a 20-year-old college student who was just not dissimilar to what I've done here. I mean, with my introduction, as you read, like, you're trying to be a mentor to younger students, younger people in my community. And just doing that might land you, and has landed people, in jail, in detention, months or years on end without ever seeing trial, not hearing their defense, not having access to regular, normal legal rights that we would, especially in the US, we would just expect to happen. Being able to access a lawyer, being able to have their rights, being able to have access to medical attention, even. We'll see some things, including torture and things like that, that have been documented. And a lot of times people were made to be in situations and conditions such that they developed cancer, or they had diabetes, and they were not allowed to take their, necessary medicines and, medical treatments with them. And so they were made to come to a point where, it became life-threatening and fatal. So a lot of these problems here, not just a random story. Again, so many detentions, and this is, there is no rhyme or reason. These come in waves, and just random people that, if you're an acquaintance or you're a friend, or you have someone's name on your contact who they first detained, you could be in the next wave of being detained. And so masses of people were detained, and the operations carried out to destroy pretty much what the government itself saw as opposition forces, especially anyone who had any acquaintance or any organic or non-organic or any kind of tie with what they portrayed as the Gulen movement or Hizmet movement. And so it is a political witch hunt that has come to unprecedented levels. Arrests, even though no links to terrorism. I mean, they can't even bring any evidence that any one of these individuals that they claim were part of these, organizations these pretty much NGOs, they could not prove any one of them even had a single, weapon or anything where they engaged in some act of actual terrorism or harm to actual any human beings. So pretty much just charges. Something weird, which may come, weird to you, but this is a very, very interesting method of oppression, actually. Taking people's passports, not renewing their passports. And this is something that I know people personally here in Houston. We have the Turkish consulate, and numerous places throughout the world, or just the US even, New York, California, wherever. You have these Turkish nationals who the government has profiled with, the intelligence mechanism that they have, and whomever else, once they profile somebody as being a part of this movement, or being even an acquaintance or an affiliate, or a sympathizer, simply, like, you may have had nothing to do with anything that the Hizmet movement does, but if you're just a sympathizer, these people's passports were not renewed. I know personally people, they go to the consulate here, they want to get their passports renewed. They take their passports, they go inside, they come back, people ask what's up, they say we can't honor your request as a normal regular citizen, like, you should be able to get your passport renewed. They say no. And then the people request their passport back, and they're like, what passport? Or no, we can't do that. So now this person who may not, they may not have dual citizenship, right? And the majority of people here don't. And so they're unable to travel anywhere because they don't have a Turkish passport. They never had an American passport. So where does that leave you? In this limbo where you're a Turkish national, but you don't even have the passport. No services are being rendered to you. I mean, this is an interesting and far-reaching form of oppression that should not be downplayed. Another major thing, if I had to mention one other thing, it would be the people that were removed from government or public service. So public servants of all sorts, whether it's in the police force in Turkey, teachers who were teaching at public schools, government schools, state schools, and lawyers and judges, and all these public servants, different people who were public servants in different maybe ministries or different departments of the government, all throughout the nation in this witch hunt, have been removed, have been expelled, have been kind of marked in a way that they are unable to obviously get employment with the government. And then anyone else who tries to even hire them, they know that they don't want to be on the bad side of the government, so they can't even get jobs or procure a livelihood. And so and then even if you were working, let's say, because as we said, the Hizmet movement is huge on education and building schools and educating and bringing the best of education, specifically STEM type educations, to uplift the general population in the country. You have a situation where even if they work at private schools or private organizations, the government has laid claim and has pretty much taken from under these private institutions their buildings, their institutions, their schools, and they've renamed it or reopened it under their own names, or given them to people who they see and groups they see as their supporters. So a lot to go through here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Again, judges and everyone. You could be a judge who judged, fairly, seeing there was no evidence brought against this person, seeing as how there's no reason to keep them in detention or throw them in jail. And if you judge that way, you could be thrown out, or you could have your own case brought against you just for being fair like that. And so it's kind of it's like a drop that drops into water, and then the waves become bigger and bigger. And it's at a point where the repercussions and the consequences of the actions that are done, I don't even think the perpetrators at this point can understand the level of oppression. Again, seriously ill people developed cancer, or they had cancer, not allowed medical treatment. These are real things. People who are trying to leave, obviously their passports are taken away. If you tried to leave after 2016, the coup attempt, you were stopped at the airport. If you were able to get on a plane, they will come pull you out of the airplane. This has happened to numerous people. So it comes to a point where these people are trying to leave the country in any way they see fit, whether that's trying to cross a border or somewhat. And so many people trying to cross the border into into Greece, the Meriç River or the Maritsa, and a lot of people drown, or a lot of people don't really make that journey, or now you have all sorts of issues and problems. And this falls on deaf and silent consciences in Turkey, unfortunately. A lot of people die because, can you imagine, someone who was the breadwinner in the household goes to prison for God knows how long. Who knows why? Who knows if they'll be adjudged fairly and actually be able to leave because they've done no crime. They've committed no crime. And so the families without an income, their kids psychologically bullied or otherwise at schools in their neighborhoods, all these things can lead and do lead and have led to suicide because of desperation by these families. It's a very, very, very sad situation. People who were made to, pregnant mothers who were detained, and then they were, right after giving birth, maybe a day or two or a week, taken from the hospital, put into handcuffs. So many people, young children and babies growing up only having known the cold walls and the cold floors of a prison because their mothers were in prison. And again, these people without any evidence or any trace. So there are a lot of things here. Again, a huge loss of academic, a huge brain drain has occurred in hospitals or universities, and so it's actually coming back to bite the whole populace. And that's kind of an interesting thing as well. So this is one specifically specific set of images and visuals I wanted to go over. I do want to be wrapping up right now, but you could have private institutions, private businesses, who just because the government has profiled the owners or holdings, whose CEOs that they, or board members that they see as affiliates of the Hizmet movement, they will pounce on and take the buildings and the organizations and everything, and even schools and universities, and they will now appoint new government-sided rectors or deans or CEOs. Really no security of life, no security of livelihood, no security of personal belongings or property. It's at a point where on all fronts it's kind of an embargo on someone's whole life. And just to run through very quickly, not even the single points, but I want to show you here's another one link that I showed: social genocide practices. So these kind of practices that the government has placed into the laws or the practices in the country kind of squeeze the life out of these human beings to where you're left nowhere to go, nothing to do, no way to live. And so I just want to go over the major headings of the specific the table of contents here. So the right to life has been assaulted by pushing people to death, actual assault, causing death via psychological attacks, forcing people to suicide, all these things. Prohibition of torture and ill treatment, not relevant at all at this point. And so you see right to security and reputation protection, freedom of thought and expression, those are all suppressed. And so I urge everyone, as I conclude, I urge everyone to kind of make use of these resources. Thank you.
Hey, Masood, if you can share your charts with me, I will share it with our membership, and they will, I'm sorry we have to kind of.
Oh, sure. No, I was wrapping up. Thank you very much for your patience.
Yeah, it's a huge subject.
These PDFs are, so these are the links that I shared, and the PDFs are right here, but I can share the exact PDFs as well.
Yeah, just email me your charts and I'll share it with our membership. I did capture the link that you put in your chat. So just
I can email.
yeah, I'm sure our guests and members will have a lot of questions in the Q&A session, but let's go to the next speaker. The next speaker is Claire. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your last name right, Sadar.
Sadar, yeah.
Sadar. She's studied and written about Turkey for more than a decade. She has served as the Amnesty International USA Turkey country specialist for the last 5 years. The topic that she's going to be talking and presenting is Turkey's disinformation crackdown. So please join me in welcoming Claire Sadar to our meeting. Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you. And thank you, Mesut, for your presentation. As he mentioned, there is so much going on in Turkey. It's impossible to cover everything in such a short period of time. So I'm trying to focus on one aspect of Turkey's infringement of human rights and why it matters in the bigger picture. Turkey currently ranks 149 out of 180 countries on the Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index for 2022. So basically one of the worst countries for freedom of the press and information in the world. Over the last 2 decades in power, the ruling government party has built a powerful coalition of party-affiliated businessmen and media outlets whose livelihoods depend on the political order that currently rules Turkey, and therefore are basically parrots of the government line. So as a quick history of how this has happened. Turkey has never been perfect when it comes to things like free expression, freedom of the press, but in the beginning of the 2000s, it was much, much better. However, starting in about 2007 with the internet censorship law that has been amended over the following years, the Turkish government has tightened its control over not only the internet, but published press freedom in the printed form, freedom of speech, freedom of association. The 2013 Gezi protests kind of laid bare the amount of government capture of the media that had happened between 2007 and 2013. The media during these nationwide protests, which saw thousands of people protest in hundreds of cities, not to mention the massive protests that took place in the largest city, Istanbul. The media outright ignored or printed false information about these protests. And it had since then, freedom of press has only gotten worse. In 2015, there was a collapse of a peace process, which with the Kurdish guerrilla movement, the PKK, which has led to renewed attacks on Kurdish media and reporting on suppression in the Kurdish regions of Turkey. And then, as was mentioned before, there's the failed coup attempt in July of 2016. This led to closures of dozens of media organizations. At least 156 media outlets were shut down by executive decree. More than 120 journalists and other media workers were detained, some for up to 9 months without trial. And for several years after this, the Committee to Protect Journalists described Turkey as the biggest jailer of journalists in the world. It's not only been journalists who've been jailed, academics, writers, anyone who basically criticizes the government has been subject to criminal investigation, intimidation, harassment, censorship. The severity of the Turkish government's repression of the media is such that it's been described as some as the death of journalism in Turkey. The purge that has happened over these years has basically wiped out the already embattled Turkish media landscape and left only a few straggling voices of dissent. And that brings us up to the present. So this summer, there will be national elections, and the Turkish government's capture of the media makes, not to mention everything else they may be doing to try to make sure the elections go to their favor. The capture of the media makes these elections not meeting the definition of free and fair, because the amount of information people can get about the opposition from media outlets is basically slanted and or non-existent. So part of what is seen as part of the Turkish government's strategy toward making the noose around any sort of dissenting voices even tighter has been in October of last year, there was the passing of a quote unquote disinformation law. So this disinformation law, it basically says that anyone who publishes disinformation or fake news that causes fear or endangers the security and order of Turkish society could face up to 3 years in prison. It purposely leaves the definition of things like disinformation and fake news, deliberately publishing these things or causing things like fear or the security or order of Turkish society vague, so that it can be applied as widely as possible. And it has additional stipulations that if you publish something that's an anonymous source or acting part of a larger organization, you can have additional prison time added to it. It also forces online messaging services that were, previously private and encrypted to hand over user information to the government. And this covers online as well as print publications, which is something that's important because online publications were was one of the few places where there were publications that were acting as independent sources of information. Although this has not been applied widely yet, it has already been applied. The first person who was arrested under this new law was in December of last year. They were a journalist who accused some policemen of sexual crimes and were forced to retract their accusations. Let's see. So this new law is especially dangerous in a country where it was mentioned before, the judicial system is captured by the ruling politicians and has repeatedly been accused of using laws to penalize critical journalism. So there's no freedom of press, there's no freedom of the judiciary. So anybody who the government wants to target, who is critical of the government, can just be, forced into court and have the outcome of their trial already dictated. Let's see. So some of the things that you can work on as an Amnesty group, if you're interested in working on cases that relate to freedom of information, freedom of association, and freedom of the press. There is a prisoner of conscience case for the Gezi 7. So the short story is that this group, who is kind of headed by Osman Kavala, who was a well-known philanthropist and a patron of civil society, has been, Osman Kavala has been accused of financing the Gezi protests, which of course were spontaneous free expression of people's dissent against the government. this group that is associated with him loosely is accused of being some sort of couple that, you know, created these protests. So at its heart, this case is really about freedom of expression, freedom of civil society. And there are also several filmmakers who are included in this group. I can go into more details if people want more details, either now or later. There is also a new campaign that Amnesty has started in the last few months called Protect the Protest. So it is a worldwide campaign that focuses on cases where the right to protest and express dissent against governments has been curtailed, and Turkey is one of those places. The campaign challenges attacks on peaceful protests and supports causes of social movements pushing for human rights change. So if you're interested in being involved in that larger campaign, I'm happy to put you in touch with people who can give you more information about that. There's also an ongoing case of someone who was arrested just in October. Her name is Şebnem Koro-Fincancı, and she is the head of the Turkish Medical Association. She has been held in pretrial detention since October. She's been charged with making propaganda for terrorist organizations because she called for independent investigations into the allegations that the Turkish armed forces might have used chemical weapons in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. She is not just a doctor saying this. She is an expert in crimes against humanity and has investigated dozens of cases like this. She's a well-respected, worldwide known figure. At her first hearing in December, the court decided to continue her detention, and her second hearing was postponed to 2 days from now, so January 2023, January 11th, 2023. So we expect that she's going to continue to be detained. However, we are going to continue to call for her release because, she is being held simply on words that she said, and not by any actions or any quote terrorist propaganda or making terrorist propaganda for a terrorist organization. So if you want to work on her case and support calls for her freedom, I'm happy to talk to you more about that as well. Something more general that you can do is lobby your members of Congress. Members of Congress and members of the Senate, both sides of the aisle, have recently, one of the few things that they've come to agree upon is that Turkey has a serious human rights problem. So that tells you how blatant it really is. And that it's become an issue that many people in Congress have been working on. And so your congressperson, your senators may already be involved with this, they may not, but it's definitely something that is in the air in Congress right now. And so it's a good topic to actually talk to your representatives about and see what they're doing about human rights in Turkey. Because many are working on it, and those who aren't, probably have colleagues who are, so just give them a little push in that direction. And so that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can't go into real deep detail on any of these cases right now, but if you are interested in working on any of these cases or anything else related to Turkey, I'm happy to provide you with more information, and talk, later about some of the things that you can do.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Claire. Thank you. I think if I saw it correct, Luisa has a question for Claire. Luisa, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, my question is, to what extent is the United Nations, for example, address these Turkish humanitarian issues? And I mean, we hear some of this in the media, but not to the extent that you've shared with us. And so I was just wondering about international response to what's going on.
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about what the UN is doing. I know that the Council of Europe and European Court of Human Rights have actually been doing quite a lot. They several cases regarding the detainment of Turkish basically political detainees have come to the European Court of Human Rights, including that of Osman Kavala, who I mentioned, and they have ruled that their detention is unlawful and they have to, and that Mr. Kavala should be immediately released. However, Turkey hasn't been complying with these rulings. So in Europe specifically, there has been a lot of attention paid to these cases, and the European governing bodies have been trying to, do their best to point them out and push Turkey to actually, release some of these in unlawfully detained people. Unfortunately, it hasn't been working all that well.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, hey, Wally, unmute and ask your question.
Okay, yeah, I'm interested in knowing if the election that's coming up this year, whether there has been any push for independent oversight of the election.
I believe there's always a push for that. I don't know what the status of this is right now. But I'm sure that there are people who are trying to make sure that happens. Whether they will actually allow that or not is a different issue. The independent oversight is just part of the problem in Turkey. As I said, there's so much going on before the election that actually, it contributes to the unfair and unfree atmosphere of the election itself. So it's kind of just part of the entire, capturing of the democratic process.
If I may add some, just to give you an example of kind of the mindset and I could call it arrogance, I guess, or the lack of, well, the frivolity, I can say, of how the government kind of approaches this question of election oversight, or having the elections kind of at least be recognized from an outside point of view as, free and fair, or, election oversight being a very major kind of concern, right? I can share my screen with to show you something. It's kind of half funny, half unfortunate. This is from 2014. There was a huge election night power outage, and literally the officials blamed it on a cat went into the power lines and that caused the outage. And so this was at a time when a lot of things were at stake, and a lot of referendum, changes to the law and all these things were at stake. And so this is kind of for someone to have the audacity to kind of come and say, oh, this is why. And this is with that election night outage, you can switch whatever you need to switch, you can change whatever you need to change, you can have any movements in the dark that based on how you believe the election is going and the counts and the votes are going. So just to give you kind of a reference point as to how, you know, how much import is placed and how much kind of ridicule is also a part of this. It's at a point where it's kind of ridiculous, the kinds of stunts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, you're right. It's to a level where the audacity, they don't really care. Like the fact that they made the Istanbul mayoral election be rerun just because they felt like it, and then the ironic part is they won, that the opposition candidate won even more in the second round. But you know, there was no legal reason for them to do that. They just did it. And so there's just kind of a feeling that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we're pretty much blatantly overturning elections at this point, or blaming the suspicious activities that are happening on a cat.
Here, Don Rohr, you had a question.
Yeah, I've been trying to visualize who, it seems like such a large cross section of the population is oppressed. How does the government recruit support, and is it the army, or who enforces the government rules? It seems like there would be, they would have a difficult recruiting problem with so many people oppressed and so many families affected.
It's complicated. The short answer is people were doing economically okay up until a few years ago, and then the economy has crashed. And now that the economy has crashed, people are getting annoyed and angry when to a point where polls are showing that the government party may lose an election if there was completely free and fair. You know, it kind of just comes down to, do a lot of people feel like they're secure in their daily lives, and the fact that they have a job and can you know, feed their families. And the government did a very good job at giving a lot of people jobs and stability. But that's kind of falling apart now. So it also comes down to the fact that things like you know, freedom of information are squeezed to the point that people don't hear about these things unless they actively seek them out. And so, you know, it's not like here where, you know, things will go, like you can obviously find out the big things that are happening. The Turkish government spins it or suppresses it, anything that's happening. So it's very hard for people to kind of see the big picture unless they really want to, I think.
It sounds like partly the government's been able to pay for their support.
Yes.
Oh, big time.
And
I mean,
so
just
it's an economic kind of an economic division as well.
Yes.
After the
I think
problem.
I think we have time for one more quick question, and then we'll wrap it up with Bob's gift card giving. Does anybody have any more questions? Going once, going twice. All right. Okay. So Claire and Mesut, thank you so much. This was a really hot topic, and we got a lot of folks who were interested in this subject. And unfortunately, over the last 3.5 years or so, our chapter has been in operation. We did not, have this topic as a topic for our monthly meeting. So I'm glad you guys found the time to come and talk to us. I know this is a really huge topic, and it can go on. I mean, I just looking at Mesut's chart, he could talk for a couple hours. But Mesut shared the charts with me, and I'll share it with our membership. And thank you so much. And the last thing that we do is we have a gift card giveaway for all the folks who attended the meeting. So don't go away. He's gonna make his announcement. So Bob, go ahead.
Well, let me ask you one thing. How, Mohammed, are you going to tell them about our parade that we'll be participating
Oh, okay,
in?
yeah. Before all those folks who live here in Houston, okay. This year, this is the first time we are doing it. We are going to be part of the MLK parade on Monday, January 16th at 10 a.m. downtown. Okay. In my email, I had included a link for you to register. It's no cost. All you have to do is show up, and we'll give you the details. And the walk itself is 1.5 miles, and we have our own banner, and we'll just we'll have fun just walking with several other organizations at the MLK parade. So the link is there. If you need any more information, just send me an email or contact me. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
All right. So let me stick this above my head. There we are. Got a pan here. So, all right, I've got someone's name. Now this is what I need these for. Claire, you have been selected. There you go.
What did I get?
Okay, so Claire, we have an independent bookstore here, Brazos
Oh.
Bookstore, and you can okay, so it's a $10 gift card. You can go to their website, order
Okay.
something, and tell them tomorrow morning I'll call them and tell them who the winner is. So
Okay.
you can go to the bookstore and either call them or online, just order it and tell them that you have a $10 gift card and they will ship it to you, whatever you order.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Our next meeting is on Monday, February 6th, the first Monday of that month. And Wally is really working hard to get a great speaker from Planned Parenthood.
Yep, I'm trying.
We'll be talking about abortion rights and so Wally, make it happen.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. There we
Thank
go.
you.
Thanks, Wally. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Mohammed.
Mr.
Bye-bye.
Mohammed, as
Uh-huh.
the Rawa youth participants, we want to thank you for inviting us to this event. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. And you have my email address. You can send me an email and I will invite you to future meetings. We meet on the first Monday of the month, same time. Meeting is an hour long, and we really would like folks from the Rawa group to come and join us.
We would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody take care. Thanks for having
All
me.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.